This is the first session of our first online design festival. That's a bit of a mouthful. But we've got 30 this week, which is great, with a whole host of people in studios and communities. This one is really important to me, obviously from what we've just been talking about. We've got the Black Girls in Design team with us, which is something that I came across over on Instagram earlier this year, and then we spoke to Sandra about getting you involved. And I'm very grateful that you spent the time, you and your team have put together a presentation for us. So I'll throw it over to you. Please just run through it at your own pace. If there's any time for any questions at the end, we can try and fit that in. If not, we'll just see where we get to at 10:45. So I'll throw it over to you, Sandra, and the rest of the guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you've got.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. It's nice to see everyone here bright and early. I was just discussing with Chris, like, for him, I think for me, it's the same thing. Wednesday, I would say, is the day that my week really kicks off, but it's good to be up and early on a Monday morning. So yes, I'm Sandra, the founder of Black Girls in Design, and I'm joined here with the rest of my team, Maria and Elsie. So I'll crack on. So I'm Sandra Adu. I'm a multidisciplinary design educator and cultural policy researcher with experience in design, education, and community work. My research thesis explores the experiences and aspirations of Black graphic designers in the creative arts industry. Initially, I didn't study graphic design. I actually studied fashion management and marketing. I went to UCA University, and at the time, to be sincere, I didn't have an idea of exactly what I wanted to do. But what I am grateful for is that my degree allows me an opportunity to explore using design tools such as Adobe Illustrator, InDesign. We had to design all our documents in InDesign. We were not allowed to use PowerPoint. They wanted to give us skills that will help us, let's just say, be more explorative within the creative arts industry. They didn't want to limit us to just Microsoft Office. Funny enough, when I landed my first agency role, they said, hey, can you design us a deck in PowerPoint? I'm just like, oh, I haven't used PowerPoint in years. So it's quite interesting to know that, fair enough, I was taught how to use all these tools, but when you do go into the corporate setting, it's about adapting your design style and making it work for everybody else within that office, within that setting. So that was an interesting experience for me. So as I just said, with my experience in graphic design, creative education, my research is definitely a crucial step for me towards fostering a more inclusive and diverse industry. The outcomes of my research will significantly impact how industry perceives and understands the unique challenges and strengths of Black creatives in Britain. So my actual research is about the position of Black graphic designers in Britain. And so far, it's been quite interesting being able to see the geographical clusters of the creative industries as a whole. I've had the opportunity to have a look at perhaps where is the creative industries thriving from a geographical perspective. And it seems to me that London seems to be the up and thriving place. But what about other areas in the UK? What about Birmingham? What about Loughborough? What about, I'm trying to think of other areas in the Midlands. You guys get what I mean. But it's been interesting to kind of identify that it's not just an issue of where are the Black graphic designers in Britain, but it's also understanding how other creatives are being affected within Britain, and then also being able to identify how Black creatives are being further compounded by this, issue. In addition to my research efforts, I've worked with a diverse and exciting clients such as HSBC, Net-a-Porter, Ren La Artisan Parfumeur, Penhaligon's, JP Morgan, and being in an agency allowed me to work with these brands. Some of these brands I worked with on a freelance basis. I worked with Puma last year with their campaign. And, being within these roles and these positions, showcasing my ability to deliver exceptional creative projects across multiple platforms. I've worked with many small businesses. That's pretty much how I started. I didn't start off just working with huge brands. It was actually a small business that gave me my first opportunity and allowed me to build my portfolio. So I have a special love for small businesses. I understand how difficult it had been, it can be. My role in assisting businesses in their endeavors is quite commendable, and my expertise has been valuable across the past 8 years. Currently, my ongoing efforts is to promote diversity and inclusion in the creative arts industry. And I was having this conversation early this morning with Chris that I don't think I had personally experienced any form of injustice or racism as being a Black creative. You know, I remember my first agency interview and my line manager loved my portfolio. I don't know if people were shocked, maybe because I'm a female and I'm Black. I don't really think that's what it was. But I had this mindset that I'm going to let my work speak for me. Whether I'm Black, whether I'm white, whether I'm red or yellow or green, I want my work to speak for me. But I know that's not the case, you know, worldwide. I know that we do experience these disparities. I know we do experience, you know, discrimination, and sometimes it can be quiet and underlining, which is why platforms like this exist to bring it to the forefront. So I'm going to move on because we don't have much time. So Black Girls in Design, what is it about? So just as I spoke about my research, it was then further highlighted to me that, you know, there is a lack of Black females in graphic design, let alone Black, you know, the Black community as a whole. And currently, as it stands, there are about 20,000 Black women missing from the IT profession in the UK. And that's within STEM. How much more graphic design? So that's a 1.8% of Black women in IT careers. And I'm sure whilst I'm currently still doing my research to find out the exact number of Black females within graphic design, I know it's less than 1.8%, because as it stands, there are only 1.4% of Black graphic designers in the UK. It's not just Black graphic designers, but it's also Black graphic design educators. And right now it's about exploring the challenges, the stigmas, looking within my communities to understand where perhaps the lack of information is missing, where the lack of celebration is missing, and also the lack of community. I would say over the past few years, I have noticed a soar in creative arts community. I've noticed a soar in, especially since the Black Lives Matter movement, there's been more, I would say, support in young Black creatives and various other Black endeavors. But in order for us to perhaps grow this work, grow this community, it really does come down to education, and it comes down to knowledge. I understand you can have grants. Having grants is great. Dishing out money is a fantastic, but without research to support where that money needs to go, where it needs to be allocated, working with the right stakeholders to push a work like this, to support young Black future creatives, we really do need to start from the foundations, which will be education. So I'm going to move on, and my one of my team members, Elsie, is going to speak about our 1.4% campaign.
Hi everyone. So that's a video that I made, and my name is Elsie Highball. I'm a final year graphic communication and illustration student at Loughborough University, and I'm going to be explaining a bit more about the 1.4% campaign and the motivations behind it. So originally this project was a project I did for university, and it was basically highlighting the disparities in representation within the design industries, which Sandra earlier elaborated a bit more on. So the 2019 Design Council study did reveal that only 1.4% of UK designers are Black, which means that we're quite underrepresented because Black people make up about 3.2% of the UK population. So the campaign motivations were essentially to help encourage young people to pursue a career in design. So I created this campaign to help bridge the gap. The stat was quite surprising for me, despite the fact I'm one of 2 Black people in my entire course. I kind of had the idea that because I went to university in like a small town in the Midlands, because the population was so skewed towards the white populace, I kind of thought that, oh, maybe in like areas like London where there's more Black people, there would be like better representation of Black people within the design industries. But the stat kind of proved me wrong. So when I discovered it, I was really motivated to create a campaign on it. And I think meeting Sandra and joining Black Girls in Design was really great for me because more often than not, I'm sure all of you know, when you study as a design student, your teachers kind of encourage you to do projects that have social issues behind them and have real social causes behind them. So to make this a real project, knowing that this is a real issue and there's like this real disparity of representation was really inspiring for me and really fulfilling actually, because it's an organization that has this true cause to educate and inspire and bridge the gap essentially. Yeah, on to the next slide. So my research process behind the campaign was to kind of break things down into realizing what are the key issues that are preventing Black designers from joining the industry. So I basically broke it down into 3 main barriers for young Black designers in the UK. So the first is a lack of exposure to design. And basically this means that most young Black people don't have role models that they can look up to. They don't have figures, they don't have people in the design industry that look like them or who would understand their experiences as Black British people. The second is a lack of design education. So this essentially means they don't really know what design is and they don't know what it's about and they don't know how to enter the industry. They don't know how things work in the industry and they wouldn't even know where to start in terms of finding the information about it. And the third, which is pretty unique, I think, to the Black community and generally people of color, is there's a lack of familial support for entering the design industry. And this basically means that a lot of parents have this kind of stereotypical view of, you know, the starving artist stereotype, whereby they don't see this career path as a viable option, as something that's lucrative, as something that's stable. And this is something that's really pervasive within the Black community. On to the next slide, please. So onto the research that I did speak to a lot of educators, and these were mainly people that I reached out to, including Sandra actually, just to kind of get an idea of what it's like being in the design space. So Sandra earlier alluded to the fact that there's not a lot of Black educators. So this was really very much a handful of people that I was able to speak to. And more often than not, they were the only Black member on their staffing team. And that these were people who were like lecturers, teachers, department heads. And I was just kind of interviewing them to kind of get a sense of their experiences as Black designers, because most of them had decades of experience under their belt. And I just wanted to get a better understanding of what it's like going from being a Black designer to being a Black educator. And something that all of them recognized was definitely the issue of representation, not only amongst them as educators, but also amongst the students that they taught. And they did understand that a lot more needs to be done to get more young people into the design industries. Particularly, they stressed the importance of reassuring parents, because in their experience, they said a lot of prospective students would come in being interested in the design field, and their parents or their carers or their guardians would often have tons and tons of questions because they were worried, they didn't know much about the industry. And that's kind of where this campaign comes in. Go to the next slide, please. So one of the outcomes along with that campaign video you all just saw was the parent toolkit. And essentially, it's created to essentially answer every question that a parent might have when their child expresses an interest in the design field. So, for example, things like average income, graduate employment rate, career paths. Design is such a broad field, and that's something a lot of people don't understand. I mean, personally, to this day, my mum still thinks I draw for a living. So I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that. It's basically a digital and print document that answers lots and lots of misconceptions people have about design, and also features some prominent Black British designers to kind of educate and inspire people, saying these are the role models you can look up to, these are the success stories, they look like you can do it too, essentially. It's basically kind of a document that I created because it's something that I wish I had when I was coming into the design industry. I'm kind of at the end of my higher education path. I recently just submitted my final coursework. And I remember while I was right at the beginning of my journey, kind of applying for UCAS and looking at lots of different universities, going for open days and things. One thing that my mum in particular was very stressed about was, what's the average income? Is she going to get a job after? What's the job security like? And this document kind of answers all of that, instead of my mum kind of bombarding all of these teachers and lecturers with lots and lots of questions about job security. Every single time we went to university, she was always asking lots and lots of questions, and this document essentially kind of answers all of them for her. On to the next slide, please. One more. Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So essentially, one of the reasons why this project is so important is because I think everyone would agree that Black designers have so much value to bring to the design industries. They're able to critically assess ideas and look at things through a lens because they have completely different experiences to everyone else. And they bring another level of creativity based on their culture, based on their heritage, based on their background. And I think the design community is really missing out because of this gap that exists. I also think it's so important to have community. That's important in any field, but because design is such a collaborative field, it's really important to have a community of people who you feel supported in the workplace, that make you feel better as a designer. I think it's important to feel as though if something happens, you have a community whereby you can tell people what's happened, and they won't ask you any inappropriate or insensitive questions because they probably have experienced something similar and they completely understand you and they make you feel secure. I mean, this is true for me in the sense that one of my best friends was the only other Black girl on the course who I met the first day of my degree. And we've basically been supporting each other through the entire course. Even when it kind of felt like we were a bit behind, I think we kind of stuck together and supported each other through our entire degree. And that's been like 4 years. And I think that we both really, really helped each other in a way that I don't think other people in the course could have, because we really had similar unique experiences through like pushback from parents, supporting the career, and feeling a bit of imposter syndrome as well. Lastly, and one of the most important things that kind of links back to the issue of representation is, simply put, Black creatives inspire other Black creatives. Seeing people that look like you makes you feel like this is possible, especially when it's a field that's so foreign to you. In Black and Afro-Caribbean households, it's very much pushed that you should go for a career in STEM all the time. So it's not uncommon to have your siblings, your relatives, just everyone be in STEM, in medicine, in engineering, in very, very kind of formal career paths. So to like kind of deviate from the norm and go for something so creative, it's really, really daunting. And I think that's something a lot of people don't understand about pursuing a career in design. So having other people around you who show you that it's possible, that even though you have the pushback, it's possible to do this, possible to be good at this, and it's possible to be successful, is super duper inspiring. And personally, that's kind of what made me get where I am today, because I had a family relative who very much was a successful designer. And every time my mom would be like, oh, is this a viable career path? I'd be like, oh, look her, she's doing really well. She went on to actually do a placement at Canon. and she graduated and created her own app and won lots of awards for it. She's doing really, really well. And I would constantly point to her, and she was like the leverage that I had to put over my mum whenever she had like concerns about it, because I was like, look at her, she can do it, I can do it too. And it was motivating for me as well. So essentially, that's why representation is so important. And with that representation and giving them a platform through things like the 1.4% campaign and through the parent toolkit inspires other generations, so that this helps bridge the gap of the 1.4%. And then hopefully in a couple of years, it's no longer the 1.4%, it'll be the 2% and then the 3% and hopefully the 4%. Yeah, but that's all for me. I'll move on to
Awesome.
Maria.
Thank you so much for that, Elsie. And just off the back of what she just said, as an organization, we strive to uphold the unheard voices of Black women within the world of graphic design. And the one way that we believe that can be achieved is through education. We need to find ways to widen participation. And I do remember we all had this, discussion. And I said, when I was in primary school, I do not remember there being any case studies of Black artists in our art classes in school. So that's where it starts, is going back to the foundation, going back to education, having these conversations, updating our curriculum. So currently I'm working with educators to refresh our curriculums. And of course, I'm sure some of you guys have seen various different kinds of courses about decolonializing the curriculum. It's an ongoing conversation, but it's not about just having the conversation, it's about making it happen. And this is why us as a community, as an organization, it's important for us to create these new curriculums. I'm not going to wait until I've been approved as a dean of school, or I've been approved as a head of a course leader or so forth to be able to design a curriculum. I've done many workshops. I've created my own workshops myself. I have the research that is viable to back up why this is necessary. So currently we are, as part of this initiative, we are proposing to launch 5 major workshops, which will help us to realize our earnest endeavors in creating a semblance within the wider community of design. So Maria is actually going to talk to us about what these workshops look like and the impact and how necessary it is within the design community and the industry, especially within academia.
Thank you, Sandra. Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Teresa Gilmore, and like Elsie, I'm just doing my my final year in masters as a student in the University of the Arts London. In my class, we're over 60 students, and in that 60 students, we're actually only 2 Black graphic designers. And this is where I felt like there was a bit of a lack of representation, where I didn't see other graphic designers and other educators that were Black as well. But Black Girls in Design help create an environment where more people of color can be seen in the classroom, in workplaces, and that's through things like the workshops and the curriculum. We encourage people to who are already designers to embrace their roots and their heritage and their culture. We do this through things like the Inclusivity in Graphic Design workshop, and this is a workshop on how many designers of colors already feel that they stray away from their cultural roots. They believe that if they are culturally centered, and it reduces their chances of employability. So we encourage them to actually embrace their cultural roots, as well as feel confident in not only their cultural roots, but as well as their portfolio. So moving on, next slide, please. Yeah. There's a lack of representation of graphic designers, as only 4.9% of graphic designers are Black, as reported by the 2021 AGI Design Report. And we're striving to encourage more graphic design, so that percentage, the 4.9, to actually increase, not only like mentioned before, not only in the classroom, but also in workplaces and environments and industries. Most graphic designers tend to always just study the design instead of actually going on, moving forward further in the industry and actually becoming educators as well as graphic designers. Next slide, please. So aside from the lack of representation, there is a movement that actually encourages inclusivity in society, and this movement is known as Afrofuturism. Afrofuturism is a cultural movement that embraces science, fiction, technology, and futuristic elements into art, literature, music, and design. So things like Black Panther, the recent Wakanda Forever movie. With such movements, we celebrate Black history and culture of the Black community. So this promotes the uniqueness of the industry, which is its diversity. Next slide, please. So how can we make the world of design more inclusive, the industry more inclusive? Or as this says, how can we change? Usually one way for incorporating movements, one way aside from incorporating movements like Afrofuturism, we also reduce the perception is by reducing the perception and changing the mindsets, which we can do through collaboration with people of color and different backgrounds. In the article known as the Black Experience in Graphic Design, Jackson says that design is a functional entity and there's no such thing as a Black design, just a Black graphic designer. So that means that design as a whole is a whole. It's not signified or single to one community. It's not for just the Blacks. It's not just for any other community, but it's also for everyone in general. So by embracing other communities and being inclusive, we actually will create a world where everyone is in the community as a graphic designer and not signifying it or making it single. And all of these mentioned before, all these workshops like the inclusivity in graphic design, the Afrofuturism, the change in design, and so on and so forth. All these help to create a more diverse community in design industry, not just graphic design, but things like illustration and so on and so forth. So I'll move on to Sandra. Thank you.
Perfect. So I will go through our values is to create an awareness of graphic design, UI and UX design careers. Therefore, we strive to prepare them for making informed decisions about their future. Our goal is to foster the creative potential of Black girls and students of color. So just as I had mentioned earlier, right now our priority is education. Currently, gathering young people, those who are expressing an interest in graphic design is so important to, let's just say, catch them while they're young. Go into schools, have conversations with parents. I know that, I didn't experience, let's just say, the challenge of what I wanted to do from my parents because my sister, she's an architect. So my mom had already gone through that process with her, identifying that she was great at fine art, and she supported her. But I know typically within the Black community, that isn't necessarily the case. It's about income, it's about stability. And when we look at Britain as a whole, we look into racial theory and the introduction of the Black community coming into Britain, it was about stability. It was about being financially, I would say, stable. And they will push you into jobs that perhaps perceive stability, such as working for the NHS, administrative roles, and so forth, law, and these typical careers such as going into medicine and so forth, that they know that, okay, once you graduated, you will get into a secure role. I know right now the job market within the creative industries is constantly ever changing. I understand the struggles of being a freelancer. I understand the struggles of being an entrepreneur. And I know that it's going to take us coming together as a community to support each other, to even finance each other. I think the more the Black community can come together and create a system that supports every single one of potential designers or potential creatives, it then allows us to be much more stronger, not just as a unified voice, but financially stronger, economically stronger. I think that's probably where the issues underlie. The economic strength of the Black community, I would say, is lagging behind. So the more of us that come together, the more of us who actually thrive in our various roles, those who can thrive in business, can begin to look at ways they can support creatives. We wouldn't have to necessarily look to the government for funding. We created our own system of support. So that is, you know, that comes down to education and creating a family. We are nothing without community. Community plays a huge part in how somebody thrives. I remember starting off as a creative after leaving university. I didn't know who to talk to. I had no access to mentorship whatsoever. Mentorship is so important. And I think this is more of a call to action to other fellow Black creatives, other fellow Black professionals, that I want to really kill this once you've made it. You just hide in your little hole, you buy your big house, you get married with your family, and you don't help your community. That's what I'm trying to break here. And that's why formulating a family and community is more than just a group chat. It's more than just an Instagram platform, but it's really getting involved into people's lives and understanding where they need help, understanding the changes that need to be made, standing with them through their adversities whilst they're growing as a designer. I think I went to an award show and one lady said she doesn't need mentorship, she needs money. And it was quite funny because, you know, I'm beginning to hear that more, that mentorship is not needed. The role of a mentor is to guide you, is not to throw money at you. But if we can have more people who can dedicate time and spend time with young creatives within education, young creatives that have gone down the apprenticeship route, and we begin to form a community and family, we will actually begin to see an ever-evolving creative industry that starts, the pipeline starting from education and ending into practice. Opportunities. We aim to create a network of opportunities for budding female Black graphic, UX and UI designers to establish themselves within the creative industry. Professionalization. As a current design educator, professionalization is so important. We need to be able to coach young creators on how to position themselves in the marketplace, how to stand out. Like I said, when I was at university, I didn't have anybody that can teach me how to position myself. I think I spent a lot of years encountering trial and error ways in how to land a job, how to secure my first business opportunity. So positioning is so important. I'm not ignoring by any means that currently right now what's on everybody's mind is, how do I make money? How do I make money? How do I secure a job? But it's also teaching young creatives how important network and relationships are. Fair enough, you can land the money, you can get the job, or you can land your first freelance opportunity. But if you're part of a network, the money goes round. Somebody will refer you to somebody that they know, and so forth. So it's about really coaching young Black creatives on how to create their identity, how to position themselves in order for them to be successful, how to position themselves in order to be more visible. Without visibility, there is no impact, which is why it's important. It was important for me to start this community so that I'm more visible. Without me being visible, young girls like Elsie, Maria, Jessica, there are so many young Black graphic designers that have reached out to me and that I currently mentor, because I decided to stand out. I decided to not really care about what my Instagram looks like right now or how far I feel like I am in my career. The point is, I'm at a point in my career that not many young Black girls who are graphic designers are right now, especially within Britain. I'm one of the few Black female design educators. And I think that's something that I have to continuously talk about and shout about until there is a change. And, you know, currently right now, Black Girls in Design, we are working with a partnered company called Ijaruka, which is based in America. And forming these alliances, especially with America, is so important because I know many Black creatives look to America for inspiration. A lot of the influences in music and in media has been springboarded off the back of Black American creatives. So working with an American company also allows us to see what more can we do for our community. It allows me to work with other fellow Black creative educators. There are so many Black design educators in America. There's quite a few, and there is there is an interesting work going on there in regards to Blackness, Afrofuturism, and so forth. So that is pretty much where we are with our opportunities. Overview of the solution. So in order to realize the fuller potential of creative industries in the UK, it's very important to diversify schools of thought and perspective. UK design system needs to celebrate and harness its myriad cultural viewpoints. And of course, we as an organization aim to add in a variety of multiple tastes and flavor in our design language. So right now, collaboration, working with other fellow creatives, us working with Right Aligned events is another way in pushing and progressing this work for a more inclusive future for not just design, but the creative industries as a whole. And I hope to believe within the next 5 to 10 years, this shouldn't be a topic of conversation. I'm hoping within the next 10 years and 20 years, it will be normal for the Black community or Black parents to see graphic design as a viable career outcome for their kids and so forth. So yes, thank you. I will open the floor for any questions at the moment.
Sandra, that was incredible. Well, Elsie and Marie as well. I couldn't think of a better way to start this week with something that's got so much power in what you say.
Thank you.
And it's just it's so clearly heartfelt. Yeah, this isn't just something that you've just decided to do for the fun of it. You can tell there's so much passion in what you say. I've got a question for you, Sandra, specifically.
Yeah.
How do you find the strength to do this? Because it must be exhausting. It must, having to repeat yourself for just basic sort of rights and sort of, the things that we should just get for granted.
Where do I find the strength? That's a very interesting question.
It must be hard to keep on having to sort of feel like you're saying the same things over and over again, because it's just such a sad state of affairs, it seems.
Yes. I would say my strength comes from understanding where the future lies. And like you rightly said, it can be quite exhausting. I think anything that's social impact, it can be mentally challenging. But when you understand, when you have a vision of how this can change people's lives, that's what keeps me going. That's what gives me strength. Elsie gives me strength. Maria gives me strength. All the young girls that I've worked with, they all give me strength. They fuel me to be able to keep going, to keep pushing. When I receive messages from parents or from other fellow Black females, saying, oh, amazing work, the encouragement gives me strength. Essentially, my community gives me strength. I know the easiest thing for me to do is really just get on with my own life and just say, hey, do you know what? I'm all right. I have not had these difficulties, but I've learned to understand what it means to help people. And for me, it's about living a life full of impact. Of course, one day when we all pass away, what would I love to say that I had achieved? What would I have loved to say I had done? I don't want to be somebody that just gets on with my own life and I just think about my own child or my own family. It's all about what can I do to help people. So that's what gives me strength, is helping people, essentially. So yes, that's what gives me strength.
Yeah, no, it's so important to have that, and I don't think many people do have that in them.
Thank you.
I think only a select few people, I think you just sort of see a lot of injustices and you feel like you've got to do something. I read a great thread the other day about, it was intention over attention, and so many people are focused on the look at me sort of mentality, as opposed to actually getting on and doing the work. I think even though it's really important for these conversations to happen, I think we need more people just doing it, silently trying to change what goes on, as opposed to sort of trying to find the limelight or the bigger centre of attention. So it's really, really empowering to hear everything that you said. I've just got a quick question for Elsie and Maria, actually, because you're both young. I wish my head was as screwed on as both of you are. You're very speaking amazingly well and very fluently. Have you found it harder to find opportunities outside of what we call the bigger cities? You have Manchester's, London's, Birmingham's, etc. It's because you were studying in Loughborough, wasn't you? Is that right, Elsie?
Yeah. I'm actually originally from London.
Okay.
So I'm at Loughborough for the duration of my studies. But what I've noticed is about 60% of the people in my course don't actually live in London. And generally speaking, there's a decent amount of people who are from like the south, so that like they live in Kent or Surrey or Reading. But there are some people who kind of live in and around the Midlands. Some people even commute because they live in like small villages around. And I think, unfortunately for them, a lot of them have had to basically seriously consider moving to a different city. Not necessarily London, because not a lot of people like London, unfortunately. But places like Leeds, Bristol, Birmingham, those kind of places. Bristol has especially like booming creative community. There's a lot of design jobs there. Leeds also as well. Even areas like Bournemouth University is very, very good for graphic design as well. So the people who live in villages near Loughborough will have to move to bigger cities. It might just be even Leicester or Nottingham, but there are like from what I've been told by my teachers, there are a lot of like booming creative industries in cities that aren't London, which is great, I think.
Yeah, and that seems to be more, I've noticed since starting Right Line, that seems to be growing. I think maybe COVID was a big part of that. There was a shift to maybe move out of London, especially some of the big organisations, like Channel 4, for instance. I think they've moved to Leeds. They set up a specific site then, and there's more stuff, not the BBC, going on in Birmingham. So I think that sort of then starts to grow its own community out from there, the wider economy. So I think a lot of creators go to. Rose has just asked a question. This is probably best for Sandra. Just asked if this platform is mainly for graphic designers, or would it be open to other creative fields? She is currently in fashion.
Currently, our community is for the design disciplines of graphic design, UI, and UX. However, you are still welcome to join the community. I have a background in fashion management, so I'm happy to have a conversation with you. You can reach out to me via Instagram, or our email address is info@blackgirlsanddesign.com. I know there is a platform for Black female women in fashion. So once I find that, I will also forward that to you also.
Brilliant. And that comment that she's just put at the top about, being empowered to give back more is exactly why these conversations exist. It's
yes,
so important, isn't it? It's not just the work that you do, it's also how you can inspire others to participate.
100%. I think it's so easy to get on with your own life. I've seen it. I've seen many people do that, and it's an extra challenge to want to change somebody's life. The changing of lives is a sacrifice, and you have to be prepared to make those sacrifices. I wouldn't necessarily knock down anybody that just chooses not to want to make that sacrifice, because exactly that's what it is. It is a sacrifice of your time, of your resources. And it's for those who believe that they have been called to that purpose to change people's lives in many different ways. There are many ways in which you can be more impactful in your community. Perhaps mentor one person, find a young person to mentor. It could even be someone within your family that you've overlooked, but they're looking at you, but because you're so busy, you cannot see them. My younger brother, he is studying game design at Brighton University, but I believe my sister and myself have been a huge influence in his career choice now. My mother doesn't speak about, oh, I only have artists in my family. She's completely fine. She's happy to see us thriving in whatever we're doing, and she's supportive. But it's understanding how influential you can be over those that you cannot even see for yourself. So yes.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I think you can just become complacent with the people around you, can't you?
Yes.
My wife, for instance, you just take it for instance, you just think she's going to be there all the time, and you sort of don't realise what people are going through individually and how much they need guidance, and we all need support. Elaine has asked a couple of questions.
Yes.
A couple of those are just comments, I think. But one of them at the start was about, can this community also help other organisations who want to position themselves to be visible? So I think that, again, that's probably a little bit similar to the previous question about.
Yes. So can this community also help other organizations who want to position themselves to be visible? So I would say other communities that we would potentially work with for Black Girls in Design is working with maybe other fellow educational partners, Black partners that want to position themselves within perhaps socially, to be more visible, to be more, I would say, to amplify themselves within media. Those are things that we can do. We have worked with other organizations, perhaps in different ways, so like different partnerships, maybe assisting them with, maybe there's a social impact design that they need, and they've chosen to work with us that helps them become more visible. Those are kind of partnerships that we've been open to. I'm just reading the comments, sorry.
That's all right.
Have you thought about speaking to schools? Yes, we are currently speaking to schools. We have spoken to a few schools in the past. Speaking to schools is quite interesting. It's an ongoing effort to reach out to schools, because with schools, they need to understand why this is needed. And it's all about speaking to the right people within, these schools. So we already have our tools in place to be able to have these conversations with schools. And of course, having our parental toolkit is, I would say, a product that we can actually show to schools to actually propose as to why having a conversation with their children is needed, coming in to do workshops and so forth to help diversify their curriculum. Another question, do you focus on helping a specific age group? I assume mostly young adults, but those who are mature. I would say I am open to, so young adults, but of course, we're starting from primary school right up to 30, 35. But there's no age limit for this community. So yes, we are open to helping mature students or mature designers.
Brilliant. I'm conscious of time, Sandra. I've obviously
Yes.
a bit of a jam-packed week at my end. I think if anybody wants to, continue to speak to you, best just to reach out, isn't it? And just
yeah, you can find us on Instagram, Black Girls in Design. You can find us on LinkedIn, Black Girls in Design. You can also email info@blackgirlsindesign.com, and we can have this conversation. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Chris. It's been amazing to be part of this, and I'm looking forward to be back again with you guys on Thursday.
Well, and you've given me so many points that I want to talk to you about even more than before. So,
Of course.
I'll be bombarding you even more with emails
Yes.
about things. But
I'm ready for you.
It's been brilliant to hear more about this, the whole purpose of what you stand for, and also great to meet Elsie and Marie. I hope everybody's.
Thank you.
And there will be a recording of this available if anybody missed at the start or wants to recap at their own leisure. Please just email me at hello@rightalignevents.co.uk and I can send one out later. But until then, have a great rest of day and week, guys, and I'll speak to you very soon.
Awesome.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, guys.
See ya.
Thank you. Bye.